That's a start
That's a start. That's
of
it.
some kind.
I mean, usually we're here before that, but I didn't feel like being here that early, so I had some other things I had to do. So, which does happen from time to time. So we always can't get here on time, but we're on time today. So it's all good. Drinking out of an Avengers cup
Yeah. You using a different microphone?
shouldn't be. Why?
Sounds different.
Let's fix that then, because it's probably yes. There it is. Much better.
Everybody out there's kind of like, is this part of the show, or are they just gonna sit here and just chat about microphones?
My microphone. I have two microphones. I have one in the camera and one in them, and I have an actual physical microphone. So the camera sometimes will override the physical because it has a built-in microphone. So it probably sounded like I was talking from like a whole nother room away, which does happen. So hopefully it's fixed. Let me double check it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
sounds better
fixed
now.
now. Yeah, that's because the webcam mic likes to take over from time to time, and I have no idea why it does that. So, anyways, welcome on into another fantastic episode of this Uncanny Earth. As always, I am your illustrious host. Yes, illustrious. Big fan of the word illustrious. So I like to use that word quite a bit. Joining me is always the other part of this illustrious show. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Spider. Talk to the people.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everybody doing? It's been a crazy couple weeks. I'll say that. It's been a crazy couple weeks. We had our shows on the UFO whistleblower stuff. All that good stuff happened. If you noticed that there wasn't a Saturday Spiritualist episode, um, then listen to my Monday episode of Let's Talk About This, and I tell you why. But I'll remind everybody again now. I had uh, another pet pass away in my house, so I was pretty not together for the weekend. But yeah, so that'll be coming back on Saturday. But if you're wondering why there wasn't one, you didn't miss it. It just wasn't there.
No, you did not. You got it. So, what are you talking about this weekend?
That's a good question. I may continue the discussion I was having on Monday, but point it into afterlife beliefs and things, which we've talked about on this show already.
We have. We
So
have.
I might take that and expand it a little bit and push it in a few different directions. It depends on where my head's at, because all that's still kind of fresh for me. And Monday's episode was a good episode, but it was a hard episode. So
Yes, I listened to it after the fact. It's a good episode, though.
yeah, we'll see how I feel about everything when it comes along. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking of right now.
Okay. Okay. So that'll be good. That'll be good. Um, welcome everyone in the chat. Hello, James. Hello, Abel. But yeah, it's been kind of a, I don't know, it's been kind of a week. It has been great. It has been bad. It has been good. It's just been a week, I guess. And here we are. Today's Friday show. Last week we talked
Mm.
about the UFO whistleblowers. That was a pretty interesting conversation. I hope you guys got in on that one. It was pretty good. Um, the highlights were mostly redacted for a good majority of it that we talked about that I saw. Didn't really release anything. They didn't say,
Mm.
it was aliens, it wasn't aliens. They said they have, things that weren't biological, you know, captured
Hmm.
and all that jazz. So I don't know. We'll see. The government never tells you the truth about this kind of stuff anyway. So, and if they do, there's a whole reason behind it. Anyways, today we are talking about vampirism. And how many of you guys have seen the trailer for The Last of the Demeter? I don't know if how many of you have seen that. Let us know in the chat. Um, it looks pretty cool, actually. Have you seen the
Mm.
trailer for it yet? Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you know the story,
Mhm.
then it's one of those things you know exactly how it's going to end, more or less. So you don't have to worry about that part. I kind of like movies like that where you're not like you don't got to worry about a twist ending or
Mhm.
this or that. You just be like, okay, I know that at the end
This is
it's
going to
all this
happen.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
So now, how well of a story are they going to tell leading up to that? And I think that
And
gives them a
yeah,
little bit of freedom to do that.
yeah, because they don't really tell you much about the boat ride.
Yeah, it just it tells you that
Mhm.
yeah, this happened, and then that was it. So it'll
Yep.
be interesting to see
Yeah.
all of that.
Because I've read Bram Stoker's Dracula probably 4 or 5 times in my lifetime, give or take. But I read it and I remember that part, and then I remember it coming into the new world, so to speak.
Mm.
So we will see where the movie goes with it. I'm hoping it's not like some other ship, and that they brought out another ship that takes it. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like they tried to do that. I don't think they'll do that, but who knows? So let's talk about vampirism as a whole. So, in order to become vampiric by nature, you have to be bitten by a vampire, right?
Mm.
What happens during that process? Do you know what happens during that process?
Well, there's a couple of variations. There's like a few different Hollywood versions of it, and then there's a few legends that we're probably going to get into. Um, the common thing is that you're bit by a vampire, and either they take some of your blood or they take all of your blood. And by taking some of that, they then either inject whatever they have in their system into you, or in the other extreme, they take all your blood out and then they put some of that now vampiric blood that they have back into you, and that reanimates you as a living dead. Um, so it depends, but there's a few different ways, and mostly it all centers around some of the blood has to come out for whatever causes the vampirism to go in.
Well, yes. What happens is once you're bitten, it's like an infection. It's like when you get rabies, or you
Mm.
get scratched or cut, something that's already infected, thus it infects you. But what I'm looking for is what it does to the person immediately after they're bitten. What do you think happens immediately after the person's been bitten?
In most cases, it actually kills them before it reanimates them. There's no, depending on what stories you listen to, there's really no real stories of a living vampire, except in a couple of very interesting cases, which again I'm sure we're probably going to talk about as that comes up. Just a quick example: in the White Wolf tabletop role playing game, the first vampire was supposed to be Cain, brother of Abel, and he was cursed with either the gift or curse of vampirism, and that was the mark of Cain, quote unquote. But the important thing to note was he didn't die first. He gained vampirism without being dead, whereas everyone else that he made afterwards as a vampire was dead or they were killed in the process. And that seems to be a running theme that usually you have to be dead to become a vampire.
So, what do you think happens within that first? But if they don't die, if this is one of the ones where they don't die, what do you think happens in that first initial hour?
Um, well, it's tricky. Like if we're talking theoreticals and things here,
We
it
are.
could be it's similar to how the whole zombie stuff plays out, because not everybody who gets bitten by a zombie technically turns into a zombie. Sometimes it just kills you because it is a real virulent virus. It is like a real like hefty. It shuts down all your systems. It basically eliminates all higher brain functions, and if it ends up cutting off access to the autonomous nervous system, then that's it. You're done. Um, so for people who are failed vampiric turnings, they tend to die pretty horrifically, or depending on some stories, they'll rise as some kind of lesser creature, like a ghoul, or there's different terms for it,
Yep.
where you're completely mindless. You can't turn other things particularly. You just run around looking for, and sometimes you just look for straight flesh to eat rather than um, just blood.
And that's true. And that's the difference between your low class vampires and your higher class. It's the feeding. Um, but let's talk about what it does cellularly on the cellular level. It basically breaks down the cells and infects the body first and foremost. And what it does is it goes to all parts of the system, because remember, vampirism travels through the blood. It doesn't travel any other way. It doesn't travel through food, unless you're eating
Mm.
vampiric blood or drinking it, but it travels via your bloodstream. In your bloodstream, it doesn't take any time for that to corrupt. So basically, it rewrites your body. Unlike the zombie, virus basically shuts down your brain, more or less, kills you off, and just reanimates you as a shumbling corpse with all the bells and whistles that you have as a human, but none of the intellectual foresight to be able to see things happen or to see things plot in front of you. You're just a mindless cannibal that must survive by eating human flesh. Vampirism is similar. However, the person themselves, either once they have died, they reanimate, but more they reanimate into basically a possessed spirit, unlike a zombie that just reanimates into a shambling corpse that still rots. Basically, it's still rotting. The flesh still will rot and fall off. Vampires do not get that deterrent. They actually become stronger. And so what happens is you die, of course, your cellular walls break down. You basically um, die from any number of things, a loss of blood being one of the top reasons vampires die. But then when you come back, you basically have a evil spirit that has invaded your mind. You still get bits and pieces of yourself because the body itself rejuvenates, the brain rejuvenates. And so, because the brain rejuvenates, it regains some of those memories and some of those um, pictures, photo pictures that you have saved of people in your head. So, they remember things. It reactivates that part of your brain that is conscious. Now, the original owner has morals and values set in place. The original owner of the body, they can deviate between right and wrong. There is no um, anti-moral compass with them. The vampire very much is. It's feed no matter what, and so you have to feed. Now, the feeding, depending, because your body needs it to restore, and the way a vampire's body restores is via consuming blood. And if anybody's ever read any ancient South American um, groups like the Mayans or the Incans or Aztecs, and that goes for Mexico too, you'll read that the heart and blood are the life energy of people. So consuming the heart or consuming blood gives life. That's why spilling blood takes life. That's why when you make a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, you're taking and receiving something else. And it's basically the same concept here with vampires. They're taking the part of them that made them a rationally good human being and giving them back that consciousness, however, tainted with a form of malice. Now, not all stories end with vampires being evil. Vampires may have come about from a couple different ways. One was Cain, how he said before. Another was Lilith, another biblical entity. Well, not biblical, but uh, Kabbalah, sorry.
Mm.
Kabbalah entity. Adam's first wife that did not obey God and supposedly had turned into a vampire. Blood also summons spirits or experienced vampires. I think only in the case of if those spirits need blood to live. I don't necessarily believe that they could be spirits without needing. I think that is at the core concept of all vampires is blood. Without that, they can't survive, or they cannot get, in some regards, the handsome appearance of some vampires. Some vampires, they're handsome, while others are horrible, demonic, crazy filled entities like we have on Salem's Lot, or it looked like the Last of the Demeter. Any of those that they have would, in fact, be blood related. So the more blood you feast from humans, you take a look-alike to those humans, so you kind of gain back your appearance. But if you feed on rats, rodents, cows, animals, you take on more of a demonic appearance. In some vampiric tales, not all vampiric tales, but a lot of vampiric tales describe that by feeding on people, you take on the traits. So could spirit vampires be responsible for cattle mutilations? That's a good point. That's a good point. Though I think if it was spirit vampires, I think it'd be more of like a spiritual energy, more so than a than a blood energy.
And there is such a thing, or we conjecture there's such a thing as an energy vampire or a spiritual
Mhm.
vampire. And sometimes there's people who act as kind of spiritual vampires, where there's people where you go and you hang out with somebody and they just suck the life out of you just from being around, because they're either always like just whatever cloud of negativity they have just like pulls out, and they're constantly asking you for things and needing things and all this other kind of stuff. They don't do anything for themselves. Everything that they get comes from the people around them in every respect, whether it's positive energy or whether it's money or whether it's whatever. And so that's pretty common, actually, whether they're actually real vampires, quote unquote, or it's just a vampiric thing. But a higher form of that, supposedly there are spiritual entities that can move into an area and slowly just leech the life out of stuff, like out of surrounding plants and vegetation, or just the people living there, or the animals, or whatever, and everybody just slowly gets sick, with no particular reason. You get anemic and things without having anything really going wrong in your blood, and that's supposed to be a thing as well.
I've never met any, but I'm sure they exist. Maybe I'm the one. Maybe I'm the energy vampire here. I doubt it, but but that could be a problem. I think. I don't know. I think that's more of maybe being able to manipulate the air around you to be able to pull in that kind of an energy. I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd have to see some
Mm.
scientific value behind that study in order for things to equate to that. But I think also we have to understand too what the body goes through during that position, during that time frame between when you are still alive and when you die and become a vampire. So when you die, obviously your body pretty much starts to decay. Once the body starts pumping all of its life nutrients where it needs to go, it decays. Um, Usually vampires rise out of the casket 24 to 48 hours later. That's when they start looking for the blood. Because, like we said, the Bible says to sprinkle blood on the mercy seat of the ark to summon Yahweh. Well, there were a lot of animal sacrifices and one close human sacrifice, but God stopped it and said, "I see your faith. You don't have to sacrifice your son. You're good to go. Isaac." Uh, but I think vampirism, in its own way, is kind of an interesting notion that people themselves, um, it's almost like an anti, because the vampire itself is anti God. One of the ways the vampire came to fruition was from Vlad, or Vlad the Impaler, how do you want to call him, cursing God. So God said, "Okay, you're just going to be a vampire now, and you're going to roam, and you're going to drink blood." Not necessarily that was the case. We do remember Vlad the Impaler was a real fictional character who impaled people on stakes, and their bodies would more or less live, I believe, for 2 days. I think you can live about
Depending.
2 days if you didn't nick an organ. But yeah, so he had that. Some say he drank blood. Some people regard him as a hero, depending on what story you hear. He was a hero to his people, I guess. So you do have that. But the idea that the body decays, right now, when the person becomes a zombie, the body just continuously decays because the body's dead, right? So, but what I think is funny is being a vampire. If you die, the first thing your body usually does is it voids itself. So you go to the bathroom, however you're dead, right? You have to wonder if a vampire would be the same. Like when it dies, if it voids its bowels and things. And then when you're in that afterlife trying to chase people down and drink their blood, somebody might be like, "This guy stinks. He hasn't taken a shower." I've noticed vampires don't take showers. Have you ever noticed that?
And that's the thing, depending on which story you listen to. Again, there's different variations, but some of the stories are that because vampires, they don't sweat, because they don't have any sweat glands or anything like that, they don't give off any moisture. Um, then they don't have body odor, and also because of the way that they become a vampire, they're essentially dried out. They don't have other fluids and things in
Mhm.
their body other than the blood. So they tend to be kind of desiccated and kind of dry looking if they haven't fed in a long time. And if they have, they're fresh and they're ready to go and things like that. But so yeah, it's a lot to do with the lack of other fluids, supposedly.
What do you think it is?
Um, it could be one of those things because there's a lot of things about vampires that are fooling the human mind. It's like a not really like a field necessarily that they give off, but it's one of those things where they can walk through an area and you can see them in broad daylight. Not really because they don't come out in the day, but if they did, you can see them like right in front of you. But then 2 seconds later, you forgot and you don't see it. They've classically have these abilities to just manipulate your mind as they're passing through an area, and it could be the same thing with all your senses. It could be a manipulation of your sense of smell and your sense of hearing and all kinds of other things. If you don't see them, you don't smell them. Just like not showing up in a mirror, no reflection. Um, that's just a guess, though.
Now, from what I've read, they show up in mirrors if they are non-silver. That's what I've heard. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of a great many deal about any cattle mutilations in Islamic or Jewish regions. But I wonder, you have to wonder, is that to appease a god? And that's why they do cattle mutilations here, because they have to appease some entity that our government doesn't tell us about, aliens of some form. Because what would they need cows for? What would aliens need cows for? Are aliens vampiric?
I mean, if you watch Predator 2, then you have Gary Busey, of course, in his Gary Busey way, saying that the Predator has a taste for beef.
Mm. So little light shown by Gary Busey. I don't know what that does for the cause, but it lets it be known. The idea, though, that um, vampires can also regenerate. If people didn't know that, unless you stick them to the heart with a stake or chop off their head. Suppose that's another one. You chop off their head. But shooting a vampire with anything less than silver bullets, supposedly the vampire lives. What I'm curious about, go ahead, sorry.
Very similar to werewolves.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there's a lot of similarities actually between vampires and werewolves, despite the fact that werewolves technically are people who are still alive. Um, but there's this thing that's developed over I don't know how long it's been, especially in pop culture, that there's actually that vampires and werewolves are rivals. And I don't know if it's ever been classically said in any old literature, honestly. I know it's like a popular thing in stories now, but I don't know if it's ever been part of folklore.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is, then it could be the fact that because werewolves are living and vampires aren't, it could be as simple as that. But who knows? But very similar um, in how they do things, despite being different on that level.
So, why do you think the fighting is between vampires and werewolves?
Assuming it's a thing, then it could just be because since werewolves are they're they're still people, but they're savage, they're animalistic,
Right.
and animals in general will shun dead things for the most part, unless they're a scavenger or something like that.
Okay.
But even if they are scavenger, if you find something that's so far along, it's just like ugh, they'll stay away from it, they'll shun it,
Right.
they'll abhor it. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think here's like a apex predator that's come upon something that clearly is like this thing is completely totally dead. There's nothing in there worth having, and it's up, it's moving around. I don't want anything to do with it. And if it's coming at me, I'm going to destroy it. I think it's an instinct kind of thing more than anything else.
So while you think it's an instinct thing, we got an interesting point here. James says, I think man once sacrificed lesser gods. In America, Christian countries, we do not. So the lesser gods take it. So do you know what the name Amalekite means in Hebrew? Let us know. Inform us. I love when the guests get involved, or when the people in chat get involved. It makes it interesting. It really does. We wait. But yeah, it's probably what I think it is. It's maybe a territorial thing, at least for werewolves, not so much vampires. So I have to wonder, what is the blood that the vampires feed off of if they bite werewolves?
Yeah, there's been a lot of pop culture stuff about.
Those who lap up blood. Huh.
There's been
I
a lot
did
of
not
pop
know that.
culture references about how generally if a vampire tries to turn a werewolf, the werewolf dies, or if a werewolf bites a vampire, the vampire dies because it rejects the transformation. And then, of course, you have the Underworld series of movies where there was a successful hybrid, which is supposed to be an abomination. In the White Wolf series of tabletop games, again, you have both vampire and you have werewolf games, and there's some rules in there about how if you combine them both, then you become a sterile mutant sort of creature that has traits from both but can't spread either version of the virus. You can't turn people into werewolves and you can't turn people into vampires. So that's another interesting take.
Do you think it's because both of them are cursed?
Maybe.
As because they are cursed.
Mm.
With vampires, it's Dracula himself, Vlad the Impaler, or Lilith, or Cain, and I believe with werewolves, it's Lycan. I think Roman emperor, I want to say. Let me double check that. There, where God commanded the to kill man, woman, child, and animals. Because they were shapeshifters. That's an interesting aspect. I didn't think about it like that. I forgot what I was looking at, but that's fine. I read James's comment and then I just kind of my mind blanked there for a second. So what would you do if you were a vampire?
It's a good question. Because it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, I would deny my vampirism and I would try my best to live in harmony with people, but eventually you'd become hunger starved and you'd probably go mad with it and you'd just end up attacking somebody and making things worse. So really, you'd have to get with the times. If you're a vampire, you have to figure out a way to survive as a vampire. And if you're trying to actually be a quote unquote good vampire, then you just have to make sure that you cultivate the people around you in a way that you're not going to harm everybody in the long term while still taking what you need.
That wasn't. I asked what you would do. What would you do? This is a question for you. This isn't a question about anything else.
Well, I'm a bad guy, technically. So I'd probably like doom it up and have like the fortress and the followers and all that kind of stuff, which would probably be my downfall because there's always going to be somebody underneath you looking to replace you. It's like a Star Wars Sith kind of thing, only instead of just like two of them, you got this whole rank of people underneath creating more and more and more this big old pyramid scheme, and the ones at the bottom are always looking to eat their way up to the top. So
what about your family?
I'd probably go someplace else, honestly. Like I'd find my own little secluded corner of some country and be like, hey, I don't really know any of these people, so that's all good.
Would you let anybody know?
That's tough because then you're dealing with other people's moral things, and when other people get certain ideas, then they're like, you know what? It's for his own good. Let's find somebody to take him down. So maybe not.
You would have lifetimes to get rich, lifetimes to make investments, lifetimes to do this and that. Where do you think you would end up? Where do you think you would go? Say you turn into a vampire tonight. Where are you going? Where's the first place you're going?
That's a real tough question.
That's
because
we always pose the hard hitting ones here on the show.
Because as tempting as it would be to go to some place like, oh yeah, just go to the biggest city like New York or wherever because I can blend in, there's a lot of people who can see you. There's cameras everywhere. Like the level of surveillance and everything is ridiculous. There's no way to get away from it. Eventually, you're going to get caught. You're going to get busted. Somebody's going to bring the stakes out. Boom, done. Then you could say, oh, I'll go to some country overseas. Maybe I'll go to like the Middle East or something because they're so widespread and everything. But they have the superstition level different. And if they suspect you, all they have to do is suspect you. And then they're coming for you. Like in a lot of the countries over there, there's still people who are like, oh yeah, there's witchcraft. Instant mob out. Boom. Doesn't matter what the person did, doesn't matter what they were doing. Done. So then you think, oh, well, I'll go to someplace really, really, desolate and I'll just come out. But then you got to find food and everything. So that's probably too difficult of a question on the spur of the moment.
Go ahead and take a second to think about it. What would you do?
The best thing to do, honestly, is probably to go for a place that has the mythology that's still fresh enough that people be like, oh yeah, don't go over there. But when they come through spending their money in town, be like, okay, probably someplace in Eastern Europe, because that's where the legend still is it hasn't completely leached out yet, and it's not to the point where they don't have quite the level of surveillance state that we do here. So if you were careful and if you were not like greedy about it, then they might just let bygones be bygones and let you hang out.
What would be the first thing you would do if you were a vampire? Like, what is the very first thing you would do? You come out of your death, and here you are as this being.
Well, the first thing that I would have to do is I would have to cement the long-term, like, because I can't get a job myself. I mean, I could.
Unless you want to work third shift.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, eventually, like, so you'd have to find somebody you can kind of tap into, and tap, and
I don't know what that was, but we shouldn't do it.
Just a little bit of a straw slurp. But find somebody who is connected with finances. You got to find somebody to be your Renfield, kind of, but not like crazy. Yeah. Not like, don't send them out to do like bodies and things like that. Don't do that, because that's just putting them on the spot and making them have to think about things. Just find somebody that you can kind of nudge around, be like, hey, you know what? You just play along. You're okay. Help me make this money. Help us make money. Everybody, goes on, good stuff. That's what you do first. You lay the foundation, and then you can get yourself a fortified area. You can get yourself security if you need it. You can get things all in a row for the long term, because you're going to be around for the long term if you do it right. If you don't do it right, you're going to go nuts and somebody's going to see you, and then you're just done. Staked or salvaged or whatever. So, yeah, first thing, lay the foundation.
Okay, then what?
Anything goes.
How would you feed?
I would probably go the not safe for work route, honestly.
What's the not safe for work route?
The outside of the scope of the show, in case the children are watching.
Right? Okay. I mean,
that's what I would do, because that's easiest. Because you got somebody who's already in a certain mood and a mindset. They're kind of euphoric, You do your thing. See you later. That was nice, but you should get going.
Okay, I respect
that kind of thing.
You wouldn't go after criminals and things like that?
Not necessarily, because that if you specifically try to go for people who are doing evil things, then you might be tempted to do more than just take your sips and go. And the more bodies you leave around, that's a trail. You don't want to do that. You just want to sip and go.
How do you keep yourself in blood?
by making yourself really likable. And if you're a vampire, then you should have that charismatic thing because that's one of the things they have, the beguiling. So that's yeah, that's a good point too. Um,
No, because you're a vampire, so you don't get the same blood diseases and things like that that normal people get. So no, it wouldn't affect you.
Now, whether it affected you or not, you might still be able to carry it and pass it on to other people,
Now that's the thing.
which is problematic because then you can pass on plagues and things without realizing it, and then you decimate the population. And even if they never find out it was you, that's your supply.
It's your food chain.
Once that's gone, you're out. You're done.
Unless you're drinking synthetic blood, but I don't know how that would work. Well, if the homeless population starts decreasing, we know that James Boggs has been instrumental in taking care of that for us. So, but yeah, what do you think your biggest weakness would be?
Well, I'm already an angry person,
Okay.
so I would probably screw up by being like angry with somebody and be like, "You're done, gone,"
Okay.
and that's probably would be my misstep. Like enough of those, and they catch you, done, easy.
Well, there you go. There you go. What do you think your greatest strength would be?
Patience.
Okay.
I'm very, very patient already. And if you have like an infinite lifespan, basically,
Yeah.
by being careful, I can be I can be patient for however long I would need to.
Would you work your way up society's ladder? Would you kind of stay remote and distant?
I still stay separate because I think I'd still have the attitude that, I'm not into the Hollywood stuff so much, and I don't think that would change me too much. It might. I mean, I have no idea, but if we're thinking that I would still retain most of my base likes and dislikes and things like that, then no, I'd probably just stay out of it. I'd be that rich person that people like, oh yeah, he shows up at these places and just, he comes and goes, but nobody really knows what he does or blah, 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 that kind of stuff. That'd be more me. I wouldn't be out there getting pictures taken or, being seen with famous celebrities and stuff like that, scandals and whatnot, because scandals will take you down too.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll do it. That'll do it. Um, so what we're gonna do is we're actually going to cut tonight's episode short because we have a little surprise for you. And I will let my co-host tell you what that surprise is. If he's still game. Are you game for this weekend still? We still good?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're still good on the weekend.
Okay, let him know.
Well, we're gonna be shooting a lot of stuff over the weekend, and I believe we're gonna be doing some more on location stuff. I think
Live
um,
location stuff.
live stuff because I have the dreaded 5G on my tablet here.
Turn him into a
So
vampire.
probably, and we're gonna be able to do things on location over the course of the weekend. Plus, we're gonna get back to old school. We're gonna do some old school drink reviews with the grill and everything, just
Been a
like
while
people
since we've done
remember.
that.
Yeah, it's been a long
Been a
time
while.
since we
Been
did
a
that.
long
They've all
time.
been like slick, well, not slick, but like well produced things here on my couch.
Yeah.
But and even then, the ones that we've been able to do have both been in the studio there. So this will be outside. We'll be doing stuff, and we're going to be doing extra videos for the Patreon. We're going to be
Yeah.
doing all that kind of stuff. So there should be a lot of content over the course of that day. Whether it'll all show up that day or not, who knows? I know some of it will, some of it won't. But there's going to be a lot of stuff upcoming, so we're going to be super, super, super busy with it.
And thank you, James. We hope you can drop in on Sunday too. Hopefully, at some point, you get to drop in. We're doing a couple lives from a couple locations. We're doing a little bit of talking about that, talking about the places we go live while we're there. We did this before with some of the places we visited. The Black Plague subdivision being one of those that I remember. So yeah, but yeah, we'll be filming for Uncanny After Dark. I haven't decided what to name this thing yet, but we'll be filming for that this Saturday, where we will be doing like a little after show like we do here. We'll be talking about the last voyage of the Demeter, so you don't want to miss that, and a little bit more on vampiric stuff. We're also going to be doing all kinds of little things, so keep yourself posted for the day. It's going to be an all-day affair. We usually do this once every few months, so we're going to get back to doing that. And now that the virus is no longer a threat to many, we'll be able to go out freely and not have to worry about it, which is what happened to us last time when we started doing this. Everything closed down and sort of stopped our momentum for a bit. But now I feel like our momentum's getting better now and more people are coming in. So be on the lookout for that. Anyways, guys, that's it for me, Robert Solomon, my co-host, Spider. Next week, we'll be talking about something else. We'll tell you about that this weekend. But yeah, stay tuned on either my Twitch, YouTube, whatever. It all goes to the same spot. Stay tuned on there, Facebook, all that jazz. We'll be live on one of those platforms. We'll be live there, and we'll be maybe hitting you up with another show. We'll see. Anyways, guys, as always, why be boring when you could be uncanny? We will see you folks this weekend. Peace.